My name's David Yaghjian. I'm a painter, have been for by avocation, not always by vocation. 72 was my first professional show. It was a family show. My father's a painter, was a painter, my mother was a painter. I have two sisters who draw and paint. I have another sister who's somewhat musical. I paint because I have to, I find. I find that when I don't paint, I start to go crazy, literally. It's not just a phrase that I bandy about. It's something that literally happens. I get very depressed, angry when I'm not able to express myself, because I express myself through my paintings. Mm-hmm. And I used to think, well, I can probably get away with not painting, but I can't. I've had jobs for short periods of time, for longer periods of time, that is jobs other than painting, and I've always come back to painting, or painted in addition to that. I've been in this space since 2005, I think. A friend of mine was here before and he left and came open. This is a studio space with 12 other artists. It's somewhat of a cooperative. It's a wonderful space in that there are wonderful artists here and the energy is good, and it has a great exhibition space, which is very valuable. It's good to get your stuff on a wall outside your gallery, outside your studio, to be able to see it in another light and have other people see it and comment on it. Vista Studios / Gallery 808, and it's a space in Columbia, South Carolina, and the building is owned by an architectural firm. Some 20 years ago, they put this space together to allow artists, to give artists a studio space and an exhibition space at a reasonable rate within the city. The rents are still reasonable. It's wonderful to have heat and air conditioning and running water in a bathroom. I've had studios with none of the above, and this is pretty luxurious by comparison. It's somewhat small, but other than that, it's wonderful. Well, I was born and raised here in Columbia, and I was here through high school, and I went away to college in Massachusetts. I went to Amherst College, and I majored in studio art, which was not something that people did there by and large. There were probably 6 of us who majored in studio art. And I was able to, because it was such a small school and didn't have a big department, I was able to study at the other schools in the area. I took etching at Smith College with Leonard Baskin, and studied sculpture at Mount Holyoke with Leonard DeLonga. It was great, and in my junior or senior year, I moved out to a farm that some friends of mine bought, and I lived there my senior year and then stayed there for 4 more years. This was in western Massachusetts. Then I moved to a little town in Vermont, West Woodstock, hardly a town actually, just a spot on the map outside of Woodstock. And a friend of mine and I lived there for a couple of years with our goats, and I painted there. And in '76 we moved to North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina, Saluda, a little town that's just up it's like the first town up the mountain. I had a wonderful studio there, not in the end, but a friend of mine bought a building, and in exchange for use of the entire second floor, I helped him put the building back together. So I painted a good deal there. Also worked as a carpenter and as a waiter. Often the subject matter of my paintings had to do with what was going on around me. And in North Carolina, I worked one of the things I did was I worked as a waiter in a small restaurant, and I did a painting of that. I worked as a carpenter, and I did a painting of the grill in town with the man that I worked for at the lunch counter. Wherever I was affected how I react or responded to the world around me, visually, emotionally, temperature-wise, whatever. I'm sure I know it affected me, but I've always pulled a lot from my imagination and memory in my work. even as I would do paintings that were just, I never did landscapes, but I would do houses from time to time, or buildings, and they were always what was around me. And then I would, I would paint from life, doing a building or a still life or something, and then I would always go back to painting from my memory and imagination. And I think that's because as growing up, I was looking at paintings constantly, and they were, the ones that appealed to me were ones that were allegorical, they were ones that were mythological, they were ones of that dealt with dreams and memories, and so that's what always appealed to me. There was a richness in them that, rather than, not that there can't be a richness in any type of painting, but it's simply what appealed to me. Things that dealt with the history of different religions, of different mythologies, of larger than life, larger than human figures, larger than human forces, something that just takes me beyond myself and into, stretches my imagination. What started out as a swimming pool, you see this horizon line suggesting a pool, turned in eventually to a stage with this curtain. You have this sort of sense of semicircular, and what were the sides of the swimming pool are now the seams in the curtain. When I talk about mythology or allegory or religions, you know, I've got, you know, you've got the moon, which is in all myths, in all religions. It's a powerful, powerful force. It's a symbol of the goddess. It's also the symbol of, in some myths, it's bull's horns. It fascinates me that all these things are in so many different cultures and so many different religions and so many different mythologies. What I'm doing with them at this point is just putting them on a stage which allows me to put anything there, and making a small vignette, a small play of my matter. It can be, that's another, you know, sort of ambiguity or tension that is in there, because I don't know really whether they're behind or in front of, and then, you know, you can separate that. Is it conscious or subconscious, or is it, you've got all this balance going on. And it's not that I do this, start out consciously to do that, it's just when I look back I see these things, or I don't even necessarily see them. People will say to me, well, this is going on or that's going on, and I go, yeah, that's pretty interesting. So what I try to do most often is not think out the work before I start. I'll just sit down or stand in front of the canvas and start painting, and then either something I've heard or something I've read or something I've thought about or something I felt will suggest what sort of, like these apes started last year because I kept hearing about them on the radio, on NPR. They were talking about bonobos. And at that point there was a bit of a lull in what I was going to put on the stage with this man next. And there they were. That was what had occurred to me. That was what had come into my consciousness. And so rather than say, well, why? I just said, okay, I'm going to go with this. Yeah. There's a lot I don't know about in this world, how to respond to it. And so this fellow has slowed down immensely, almost to a standstill, which is appropriate for a painting, I think. And he's trying to sense what is going on. And there may be a point at which he has to move a little bit more, but he's feeling what's going on in the world, in his world, and trying to make either emotional sense of it or psychic sense of it or logical sense of it. and these creatures, icons are moving through it as though in a dream. I realized once I thought once this primate had appeared, and playing with that, and the fact that this is the South, and it's, in spite of its being the 21st century, we're still reliving the Scopes trial, you know. Not to point fingers or make fun of anybody, but it's, you know, it's interesting to me that that tension exists. I just called it greeting because I didn't know what they were doing. I mean, they've come together for one reason or another, but then it seems to be a friendly encounter, yes. Call this one Scene Something Something Lawnmower, and there's a bonobo in the background crossing the space, and the guy's looking out into wherever, and it's like the bonobo's going, what is this guy up to? What is that thing he's got, and why is he doing that? And the man's going, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Drawing is a way of allowing me to see. There's a tendency to think, well, I know what that is, but until I draw something or paint it, I've not really looked at it carefully, and that's a way of absorbing it and then taking back out or giving back out the sense of whatever it is, in this case of bonobo. So that's just a sketch. Actually, this is a much earlier painting. That's probably 10 or 12 years old. The landscape of the building in Atlanta. I painted mostly highways. Seriously, that's what I painted in Atlanta. I had to do that to keep that force at bay almost. It was just too overpowering. The city was just too much for me. And it was like, if I paint this stuff, I can keep it out here. We were in Atlanta, my wife and I were in Atlanta from '85 until 2000. We moved back here in 2000. It was cancerous. It was metastasizing, what was going on in Atlanta. One of the most fun shows was Jeff and I went to Germany in 2011 as part of a sister city exchange, cultural exchange with Kaiserslautern. And they put us up, they flew us over there, they put us up for 10 days, they fed us and feted us and took amazing care of us, and all we had to do was work in their studio space. They had a kitchen there. The kitchen was a big part of it, and they ate together a lot and fixed big meals and fed us amazingly. And then at the end of the, or just before the end of the time period over there, we had a show with them, a themed show, and that was a lot of fun. We all helped put it up and had a reception. Well, it was just a lot of fun to work in another space with other people, other artists that I hadn't known before, and how at ease I was there with them, and how friendly they were. So the show was just a lot of fun. The skylight is something I really enjoy in this space. I've not had a skylight before, ever in a studio, so I've loved having that. I've had studios where I had neither of those, obviously. Wood heat. Try to get in here early in the morning before traffic picks up too much, because I find that I need a certain amount of quiet to be able to concentrate. If I'm in here and I've gotten momentum going, then it doesn't matter what's going on outside the room. But if I get in here and there are a lot of people here, and people coming in to see shows or people coming in to visit, I lose that momentum and have a hard time getting it back. So this space is great in that it's, I love having the skylight. I like having a sink in the room. I like being warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It's convenient in that I can walk here from my house. It's a wonderful space. It's a wonderful location, right. And the people are great. The other artists in the space. There's a gallery here, If Art, who's the person who took us to Augusta, Wim Roofs. Mm-hmm. And he's a wonderful gallery, wonderful, hard-working man. I'm in one gallery in North Carolina, a small gallery, and they've sold a few pieces, which has been good. But I need to stretch. I'm not ambitious and I'm not driven, and that may be laziness. It may be abject fear of rejection, or it may be that I really don't care that much. I like doing the work. I don't like marketing. I have some Google pages on the internet, and Wim, my gallery here, has a good deal of my work on his website or blog site, and the gallery in North Carolina has work on their website.